In 2001, the United States let China into the world trading system. The bet was simple. Trade would grow, prosperity would follow, and over time China would become more like the West. 25 years later, that bet looks like it failed. What has replaced it is something economists are now openly calling an economic Cold War. There are no troops, there are no missiles. Instead, there are tariffs stacking on top of tariffs. Entire technology sectors cut off almost overnight. And a group of minerals most people have never heard of holding the modern economy hostage. In this video, I will break down exactly how we got here. I will explain what tariffs and export controls are actually doing to both economies. I will show why obscure minerals called rare earths became one of the most powerful weapons in the world. And I will explain what this new era of economic warfare means for anyone living in the United States or the United Kingdom. To understand the current standoff, you have to go back to December 2001. That is when China formally joined the World Trade Organization. In exchange for access to global markets, China agreed to a sweeping set of reforms. It promised to cut tariffs, protect intellectual property, and open up its economy. What followed was one of the fastest expansions of trade in modern history. U.S. goods imports from China rose from around 100 billion in 2001 to more than 400 billion by 2023. That was an enormous leap. It was driven partly by China's position at the center of global manufacturing supply chains. China assembled products for the entire world, using components sourced from everywhere. For years, this looked like a success story for globalization, but underneath the surface, tension was building. There was tension over intellectual property, there was tension over the growing trade deficit, and there was tension over China's rising capability in the exact advanced industries the US considered strategically vital. That tension broke into open conflict in 2018. The first Trump administration imposed tariffs on Chinese goods under Section 301 of U.S. trade law. Average tariffs on Chinese goods jumped from around 3% to over 20% within a matter of months. That was the opening shot. What has happened since has been a steady escalation, spanning multiple U.S. administrations. Most trade experts now describe it using one specific term. That term is decoupling. Tariffs have become the most visible battlefield in this conflict, and the picture has gotten genuinely complicated. After years of escalation, the US and China reached a fragile truce. It followed a Trump and Xi summit in Busan, South Korea, in late 2025. The deal was a roughly one-year pause intended to prevent further escalation while both sides negotiated. But even during that truce, the underlying tariff structure kept shifting. In early 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court actually ruled some of the broadest tariffs unlawful. That forced the administration to rebuild its tariff strategy using different legal authorities. It leaned on Section 301, Section 232, and Section 122 investigations instead. Then, in July 2026, the U.S. Trade Representative imposed a fresh wave of tariffs. These ranged between 10% and 12.5%. They hit dozens of economies, including China. They stemmed from a forced labor investigation, stacking on top of tariffs that were already in place. The scale of this is hard to overstate. One widely cited estimate from the U.S. Trade Representative is striking. It suggests that balancing trade with China alone would require an average tariff of around 68%. That is roughly double what is estimated for Mexico. And it is 5 times what is estimated for Canada. Independent analysis from the Tax Foundation adds a household angle. It estimates the cumulative effect of these tariffs amounts to an average tax increase of roughly $900 per U.S. household in 2026 alone. Meanwhile, China's trade surplus has remained enormous. That is the gap between what it exports and what it imports. It is estimated at around $1.2 trillion. Many economists argue this is now a structural feature of China's economy, not a temporary imbalance. So, even with a negotiated truce technically in place, both sides are still maneuvering, and the tariff floor keeps shifting under everyone's feet. Tariffs get the headlines, but the more strategically important battle is happening in technology. Specifically, it is happening in semiconductors and artificial intelligence. The US has spent years building an increasingly tight web of export controls. These controls are designed to block China's access to advanced chips. They also target the design software used to create those chips, and they target the specialized lithography machines needed to manufacture them. In January 2026, the US tightened this web even further. A new rule added stricter thresholds and case-by-case review for advanced AI chip exports. It was widely described as the most significant rewrite of chip export policy since the original controls were introduced back in 2022. The logic here is straightforward from Washington's perspective. Advanced chips power artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence increasingly has military applications. So, restricting China's access to the most advanced chips is treated as a national security priority, not just an economic one. China does not have an equivalent chip industry to retaliate with, but it found a different pressure point entirely. That pressure point is rare earths. This is genuinely one of the most fascinating parts of the entire conflict. And it is the part most people have never fully had explained to them. Rare earth elements are a group of minerals. They have names like neodymium, dysprosium, and yttrium. In small quantities, they are essential to an enormous range of modern technology. They form the magnets in hard drives and speakers. They appear in components inside fighter jets. They are used in coatings for aerospace engines, and they are used throughout semiconductor manufacturing equipment. China dominates the global processing of these materials. That gives it a genuine choke point, one the US does not have an easy substitute for. In September 2025, the US expanded its chip export restrictions. The new rules now covered foreign affiliates of Chinese companies. China's response came just 10 days later. It imposed sweeping new licensing requirements on rare earth oxides, metals, and magnet products. The move was modeled explicitly on America's own export control approach. Under the most aggressive version of these rules, the reach was staggering. Any product anywhere in the world containing even 0.1% of Chinese origin rare earth material could require a Chinese export license. That effectively extended Beijing's regulatory reach across global supply chains. The escalation rattled markets badly. It rattled them enough that both sides agreed to a one-year suspension of their most aggressive measures. That suspension was negotiated alongside the broader tariff truce. But the underlying leverage has not gone away. Throughout 2026, China continued tightening controls on specific companies. That included major rare earth producers based in the US. It also expanded similar restrictions to firms in the European Union. The price data tells the story clearly. The benchmark price for one key rare earth alloy rose more than 21% in a single month in mid-2026. Analysts who study this conflict closely describe it as a contest between two different kinds of leverage. On one side is America's choke point on advanced semiconductor technology. On the other side is China's choke point on the raw materials that go into building nearly everything electronic. Both sides know exactly how much damage the other could do. And that is exactly why, so far, both have mostly used these tools as threats and bargaining chips. They have avoided triggering a full economic break. The old bet on globalization assumed that trade would soften rivalry. The new reality is that trade has become the rivalry. Tariffs, export controls, and rare earths are the front lines of a conflict fought with spreadsheets instead of soldiers. And for anyone living in the US or the UK, the outcome will shape prices, jobs, and technology for years to come. This is the new Cold War. It is quieter than the last one, but its effects will reach almost every part of the modern economy.